Now, Parliament's Appointment Committee will today vet 4 of President Akufo-Addo's ministerial nominees: Senior Minister-designate Yao Osafo-Marfo, National Security Minister-designate Albert Kandapa, Finance Minister-designate Ken Ofori-Atta, and Defense Minister-designate Dominic Nitawo will be appearing before the committee all day. And now my colleague, who is also deputy head of the Joy News Political Desk, Malik Dabu, joins us in the studio with details. First, Malik, welcome, and tell us more about Mr. Osafo-Marfo, who's the senior minister designate.
Well, he was member of parliament for Akimoda. We know that he was finance minister under the Kufuor government, first finance minister. In fact, he later became minister for youth, sports, education, youth, and sports. His strength area is finance because he managed a national investment bank before. He's done a number of things. He's restructured the bank. So he's well regarded and well respected in terms of his handling of the economy and finance under the Kufuor government. In fact, he was credited with taking Ghana to HEPEC and taking Ghana out of HEPEC. So he's a very confident, competent politician. He's very articulate. Of course, what will dominate the discussion today will be some comments he made some time back leading up to the last election, when he said that in many, many countries, persons from resource-rich areas are those who govern and not the other way around. So I expect that to dominate the discussion, but I expect him to go around it because he's an experienced politician, as I said, confident, competent.
All right, before we go more into what is likely to happen when he sits before the vetting committee, let's talk about reasons President Akufo-Addo gave for nominating him as senior minister. I
mean, the reason is just his competence and his contribution to the economy under the Kufuor government at the time, because he was credited with introducing the measures that enabled the government at the time, which had come at a difficult time where inflation was around 50%, interest rates were around 50%, treasury bills were doing 30–40%. So he came in and he put in measures that brought all of that down, that they were able to raise money to do some of the things that they promised that they were going to do. They managed to stabilize the economy. Interest rates came down, inflation rates came down, treasury bill rate went down, and all of those things. So he knows this very well. And we remember also that this economy is very well challenged. Of course, inflation is better now, it's 15 point something, but interest rates are still high. Debt to GDP ratio is very high, 72–73%, and you have interest payments on our borrowing ranging around 10.5 billion in last year. This year we are expecting to pay 17 billion in terms of interest payments on loans. So that means that the economy is hugely challenged, and you need an experienced hand such as that to be able to deliver the results and manage the economy well. And in fact, when he was being unveiled by the president himself, he referred to his contribution to the Kufuor government and the fact that it was important to bring him into the government to play a key role in the economic management team of the new government to try and stabilize the economy and deal with some of the problems that have plagued the economy.
All right, Malik, so with this background you've given, what are some of the questions we are likely to hear being posed to the senior minister designate?
I think the first thing he would have to deal with is, who is he in terms of senior minister? Remember that Mahama Yarga, member of parliament for Boku Central, who is a minority MP, has raised concerns about whether his appointment is constitutional, because in his view, there's nothing in the constitution that allows the president to appoint a senior minister, that the constitution makes provisions for the appointment of ministers and all ministers must be equal. To appoint somebody who is a senior minister is to raise a person to the level of a prime minister, which is not contemplated in the constitution. Of course, his submissions have been dismissed by many, including senior lawyers who believe that he's just raising a red herring. But I expect that to come up at the vetting. They will ask him what his role will be. Is he going to be primus inter pares, that's first amongst equals in terms of the ministerial portfolios, and does that not contravene the provisions of the constitution? I expect that to come out. What he's expected to do will dominate the discussion, and of course the controversial comments I referred to earlier will also come out.
Now let's talk about Finance Minister designate Ken Ofori-Atta. What should we know about him, his background and all that?
Well, we know that he's a respected person in the world of finance in this country. He has the education, he has the knowledge, he has the understanding, he has the intellect, and he has the composure to deal with what happens at vetting such as this. What will happen is that the MPs have a certain tradition when they are dealing with outsiders, and by outsiders I mean people who are not who are either not in politics or have never been in parliament, they tend to treat them more harshly than they treat one of their own. So those who have been in parliament before, I don't expect them to have too many problems because he is coming from the outside, and also because he is related to the president. They will seek to grill him a lot more. They will seek to find out how he's going to keep his business separate from the business of state. Remember that he's a founding member of Data Bank, and he has interest in insurance companies. How is he going to keep that personal private business separate, and his interest in those businesses separate from his interest in government? They will be seeking to find out, for example, whether he's divested himself of any interest in those areas for purposes of potential conflict of interest. So those things will come up. But of course, he's a very calm person. He speaks calmly. He's a deep thinker. He's quite intelligent. He comes across as very intelligent when he's making submissions publicly. And I expect that calmness to try and manage the situation for him. So he will come up well.
All right, now let's move quickly and talk about National Security Minister Designate Albert Kandapah, his background and why the president, nominated him in terms of his justification for this particular man to do the job, and also the kind of questions we should expect to hear when he's being vetted.
Kandapah is, I expect his vetting to, there'll be two sides of it. It may not be controversial. It may not be controversial because he's one of their own. He comes from the house. He's been member of parliament for Efija Sechwe. And he's been head of the Public Accounts Committee. He's been chairman of the Public Accounts Committee for many, many, many years under the Mills Mahama government. And so I think Mills government specifically.
Yeah.
And because he's a senior member, he's been a senior member of the House, the members of the Appointments Committee, the Vetting Committee, tend to treat their own with some respect, and they will treat him with some respect. I expect that to happen because he's been a senior member of parliament. He's held that position at the higher level. He's been ranking member of various select committees of the House. So I don't expect him to be grilled as much as others would, precisely because of what I just pointed out. But because he's coming from, and of course, remember that he's been Interior Minister before, and that is why his nomination to this portfolio as Minister for National Security is not strange at all. But security by its nature tend to rake up issues, and you know that we have flashpoints across this country. They will be seeking to find out from him what he will do to try and manage some of those things. Chieftaincy, political violence, all of those things, they will come up. But on the whole, I expect him to be treated, they will be measured in how they treat him because he's one of their own.
And Defense Minister Designate Dominic Nitiwul, he's also, somebody from the House. But his nomination came with some level of criticism, people wondering whether he's qualified or not to do the job. And he came out defending, saying that he had done some courses on security in some universities outside the country. But let's talk about him, his background, and the kinds of questions that we would expect.
Bernice, you're right about that. I think that one of the controversies that will dog his nomination and his vetting is that point you just raised about his experience. Questions will be asked about whether he has the capacity to handle this position, given that he's quite young. He's 39, he's even less than 40. And if you go and check our history, you may find out all the people who have managed this portfolio before have been senior members. Remember, under the Kufuor government, we know that Dr. Adu Kufuor, Kufuor's brother, we know that General Smith was there before. And we know Benjamin Kumbo has been there before, Mark Oyongo has been there before. If you compare them to him, you would find that he's far younger. But one question will come up: do you measure a person's competence merely by their age? The answer is no. So, and also there are those who believe that if you want to appoint somebody to that kind of portfolio, the person must have a certain military background. Okay, of course, the fact that others have been appointed to that who have not had that military background makes nonsense of that suggestion, because we know that Adu Kufuor was a medical doctor. We know that Benjamin Kumbo has no any military background. We know that Mark Oyongo has no military background. So, I mean, that argument does not hold.
Flawed.
So it will boil down to has he sufficient training to deal with this? And questions will come up as whether does he even understand the system and how they work. Note that when President John Mahama appointed somebody as Deputy Defense Minister, the person was asked about the ranks of the military. He was unable to do that. You remember that brought him embarrassment, and not just him. To some extent, it brought the government some embarrassment, and he said that he would go and learn. I expect that the minority members who were majority at the time and who quite took the flag for having somebody like that to serve in a government headed by them, they will seek to pin Tinubu down, because even though he's one of them, he's a younger member of parliament, and he's been at the other side, he was deputy minority leader. So they will seek to test him, and they may try some level of equalization to try and get him to bungle up the ranks so that they can see, okay, it was not only our guy who bungled up, even the two couldn't get it right.
All right, so in general, let's talk about this. I mean, we know that some of these, veterans go for a very, very, very long time. What are we expecting today? You mentioned, I mean, with regards to the people who are going to sit before the veteran committee and all that, what do you think would be the duration of the veteran process?
Difficult to tell, but these are the star players: defense, finance, senior minister. Those are star players. National security. And you expect, and because it's starting, there's enthusiasm, there's excitement, and you would find the minority members would try to establish their role as opposition. They will dig up all the questions, they will grill the people. So it tends to take longer for the first batch of people who are being vetted, especially for controversial ones as finance, also because he's coming from outside the house and outside active partisan party politics on the whole. Even though he played roles in the MPP's campaign, he was always on the background, raising revenues, mobilizing finance. Remember that the MPP, after their 2012 campaign, there was an allegation that they took some money they took a loan that he guaranteed from Prudential Bank. I expect that to come up. So the minority will try and raise all these red herrings, or they will dig up issues. The majority, as the majorities tend to do, will, instead of asking difficult questions, they will try and cover him up. They will try and cover up where they feel that he's coming up short. They will try and show up and cover up. So I expect finance to be very long. Osafo Mafu, I don't expect Osafo Mafu to be too long, because I mean he can match up to any of them. So I don't expect his vetting to be too long. Himself and
so his experience will come to play there.
Yes. Himself and Kandapa, I don't expect their vetting to be too long. But Ken for finance, Nitinwool for defense, I expect their vetting to go really long.
Very interesting. But let's still stay on the minister's designate and today's vet. And John News's parliamentary correspondent, Joseph Opoku Gakpo, he's been speaking to Joe Osewusu, who's the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament and Chairman of the Appointments Committee, on what to expect from today's vetting.
All the ministers, by law, are agents of the president. The president campaigned on a party program, a manifesto. So what we will be seeking to find out is what is it that they'll do to make sure the president delivers on his promises contained in the manifesto. So all the castings should be geared towards getting the nominees to tell Ghanaians how they will assist the president.
You spoke of them being appointees of the president and them coming to serve at the will of the president. One of the controversial issues that has come up is one that's been raised by the Honorable Mahama Yariga, the MP for Boku Central, about the position of senior minister. He thinks it's unconstitutional and that it's not something that the president should have appointed the Honorable Osafo Mafu to. Would you vet Osafo Mafu for that position as senior minister?
Yes. So does the Constitution mention Minister for Agric? Or does the Constitution mention Minister for Interior? No. The Constitution does not mention any ministerial position with the exception of the Attorney General. Even the Attorney General, the Constitution does not call him Minister for Justice. The Constitution just says there shall be an Attorney General who will be the legal advisor of the government, period. Beyond that, the Constitution mandates the President to appoint ministers of state. The name the President chooses to give to the ministers of state, or the designation and the mandate he invests them with, he charges them to deliver, is up to the President. That's why names of ministries keep changing. Various designations are given, determining the direction the President wants to go. As long as the person is not designated as being anything other than a minister of state. So, as far as I'm concerned, there's really no issue at all.
So what's probably stopped the President from naming him as such, as a minister of state, and rather chose to designate him as a senior minister, who then creates the impression that he is lifting him above other ministers, which is where Mr. Yaraga's concern is?
You see, in this country, there's somebody we have called chief of staff. That person, in the past, indeed under all NDC regimes, have been made like a super minister. All ministers report to him. He is not vetted by Parliament. He does not report to the Parliament. He is not subject to parliamentary scrutiny. And yet we make all ministers who have been vetted and passed by Parliament and subject to Parliament's questioning reportable to that person. So what is this about? Then this is MPP style is to make whoever other people will report to, other people who a team leader report to Parliament. That's why Mr. Kojon Penny was called Minister for Presidential Affairs and Chief of Staff and put before Parliament. You know, so that name, Minister for Presidential Affairs, where does it come from? Minister, Chief of Staff, where does it come from? Is that constitutional? So as long as the person is a Minister of State, the name you choose to call him, he's not, if he were not a Minister of State, he would not be put before Parliament. You get me? So as for the nomenclature, I don't think that it's something that should hold us back or should be.
So that's the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament and also Chairman of the Appointments Committee, where we know that 4 ministers designate will be vetted today. And Malik, just about Jose Owusu being Chairman of the Vetting Committee, what are we likely to see? Who is he and what does he bring on board?
Okay, he's a private legal practitioner, he's a lawyer, he's a very solid guy. He's a member of Parliament for Bekwai. He actually entered Parliament as an independent MP. Yes, so he contested the primaries, and I think they went about 2-3 times, and the results, they tied. The third time, I think his contender, who was an incumbent MP, beat him by 1 vote. So he decided to go as independent, and he won the seat as independent against the incumbent who contested on the MPP's ticket for that constituency. So it tells you his strength as an individual. So he won the seat, and then the next election, he then contested on the party's ticket in 2012, and then subsequently, 2016, he contested on the party's ticket again. He was the head of DVLA under the Kufuor government, and he's a solid guy. And as traditionally, what they tend to do as heads of the Appointments Committee, and which raises questions about how we have structured our constitution. So even though he's a legislator, he sees himself more as a member of the executive more than just the legislator. So you would see him seeking to help the nominees. Where they struggle, he will help them up. Where there are difficult questions, he will try to gag those asking the difficult questions, and he will do it carefully so as not to come out as being overly protective of the nominees. But you can't take it away from him. He will try to protect the nominees in whatever way that he can, because previously they have done that. When Doa Jaho was head of the Appointment Committee, the outgone Speaker of Parliament, he did exactly that. Ebo Batun Odro, who was head of the Appointments Committee of Parliament, he did exactly that as well. So I don't expect Jose Owusu to do anything different. He will try to, because they always see these guys as some of their own, because he's a member of Parliament on the MPP's ticket. There are people who are coming there, somebody like Nitiwul, for example, a member of Parliament on MPP's ticket. Osafu Mafu, Kandapa have been members of Parliament from his party. So he will not sit by and watch the minority grill them. He will try and cover them up, because that's what previously the others have done.
Yes, Malik, as you can see in your shots, we are bringing you live feed from Parliament, and well, everything is getting, ready, putting up the finishing touches. So the vetting will begin. We'll give you, bring you up to speed when the vetting begins. But Malik, Jose Wusu, he says that he will not entertain any mischief. But as we've seen, like you mentioned, sometimes people dig up old stories and bring up things that are likely to create a lot of discomfort for those who are being vetted. I mean, should we expect any surprises?
Well, you never know, because when these appointments are made, people send memoranda, because Parliament itself invites people. If you have memoranda, you should bring them. So if you have questions about a particular nominee, why you think that the nominee is unfit for the portfolio that they've been nominated to, you are entitled to bring it. And of course, you must produce evidence why you think that the person has conducted themselves in a manner which is inconsistent with the provisions of the law, and why the person is unfit to hold a certain position. So they tend to give, and a lot of the time, when people have concerns, they will send their information to the minority members, because they don't expect the majority to be impartial and to push. So they will send whatever information they have to the minority. So the minority will always raise all of the issues. And of course, the person heading is one of the majority, and it is from his side that these people have been nominated, and so he will play a certain role to protect them, whilst adopting a certain delicate balance by allowing the minority to ask their questions. But if you ask a question that he thinks may pin down the candidate, he will find a way of please ask your question again, or he will say, okay, this is a matter we cannot deal with now.
Exactly.
The nominee cannot handle that. I remember one constant refrain by Ebo Batino, he's not a minister yet, so he can't answer that question. And then they will move on.
Sure. Malik, but let me just run you by what to expect the next 3 days. Today is day one, and like we mentioned already, Senior Minister Designate Yao Safo-Maafo will be vetted, and Finance Minister Designate Ken Oforiatta also will be vetted. National Security Designate Albert Kandapa and Defense Minister Designate Dominic Nitu will all be vetted today. But the committee will sit again on Saturday, January 21, 2017, to vet Attorney General and Justice Minister Designate Gloria Akufu and Minister Designate for the Interior Ministry, Ambrose Derry. Day 3, that's Monday, 23rd January 2017. The committee will also vet Minister Designate for Local Government and Rural Development, Hajia Alima Mahama, Minister Designate for Trade and Industry, Alan Kojo Tremonti, Minister Designate for Agriculture, Dr. Wuswe Friakoto, and Minister Designate of Energy, Boache Eja. Day 4, Shirley Ayokobotre, Minister Designate for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, Minister Designate for Education, and Kweku Ajaman Menu, Minister Designate for Health, will all appear before the Appointments Committee on Tuesday, January 24, 2017. 36 nominees will be vetted by the end of the process. And before we take a quick break here, Malik, I'm just going to ask you, are we likely to see some of these ministers designate rejected? We know something happened with John Otibles the last time, but is it something that's likely to happen?
It will be difficult for that to happen unless in our political jurisprudence it hasn't happened too many times, unless there's something really serious about a person bordering on legality or some otherwise. Some may have difficult vetting. We remember that the first time this man was appointed, Mark Oyongo was appointed, his vetting had to be deferred. And of course, you mentioned John Otibles, but in the end, both of them were passed. So they will be passed, I imagine.
Thank you very much, Malik Dabu, Deputy Head of the Joy News Political Desk. He's been with me in studio talking about the vetting process of the ministers designate that will start shortly. And we'll bring you live feed here on Joy News. So take a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you more stories. Please stay with us.